Good morning. My name is Swami Devaki, and this is Tyagi Chaitanya with me this morning. And welcome to all of you online. And I will begin by reading from Rays of the One Light. These are commentaries written by Swami Kriyananda on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Do you need a guru? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Many people scoff at the idea of having a guru. True to human nature generally, they make virtue of their scoffing. I am responsible for what I do, they announce, responsible for my mistakes as well as my victories. What would I ever learn if I handed over my development to someone else? To depend on another for guidance would be an act of spiritual cowardice. It would be undesirable for someone gifted with some trivial ability, for instance with words, to insist on doing his crossword puzzle himself without letting anyone else help him. But supposing, even in such trivial matters, he had no such gift, what virtue would there be in refusing to learn? For that matter, moreover, where do our gifts come from? They're not a native ability. Still, crossword puzzles are hardly an important challenge. What if a person wanted to do something daring, to climb a cliff, for instance, but refused to study the art of mountain climbing? He would climb at the risk of his own life. And how much more is risked than physical life in the great adventure of the divine search, where the risk is to salvation itself? Where is the sacrifice in seeking guidance? Even a mountain guide wouldn't presume to do one's climbing for one. His purpose would be only to help the neophyte to climb safely, and to have a wise guru is not a sign of weakness, but of plain common sense. All the saints, aware as they are of the hazards of the adventure, agree on the importance of having a guide or guru, and these are the heroes speaking, not cowards or spiritual weaklings. Jesus emphasized the importance of having a teacher by asking John to baptize him in the Gospel of St. Matthew chapter 3. We read of his coming to John, and thus Jesus said to John, "It becometh us to fulfill all righteousness." In the Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter, Sri Krishna says, "Open thyself to those who have attained wisdom. They will be thy teachers. Ask questions of them, both verbally and mentally. Serve them faithfully and with devotion." How is the devotee to recognize one who has attained wisdom? The Bhagavad Gita gives us this inspiring description of the sage. By this sign is he known, being of equal grace to comrades, friends, chance comers, strangers, lovers, enemies, aliens and kinsmen, loving all alike, evil or good. And thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Om. Om. Om.
So how do we magnetize divine grace to us? We must do two things. Number one is, of course, to meditate. But number two is to have a channel, a qualified channel, and receive magnetism or their touch. And so what does this mean? When we have a steel pole, and you take a magnet and you run it up and down like this magnet, hopefully you can see, it clips right to it. It draws itself to it. This is how the masters work with us. As Lahiri Mahashaya, when he was a young man, well, of 33 years, when he first met his guru, Babaji, The story is told and conveyed through Yogananda, who heard it through Swami Kriyananda, who was his tutor, and through Sri Yukteswar, who was his guru. They both relayed similar stories. And Lahiri Mahashaya was 33 years old. And it was around 1861. And he was working for the government at that time. And he was called into the office of his superior. And so the superior said to him, I've gotten word that you are to be transferred to Rancho in the Himalayas. Now, as I said, he was working for the government. He was an accountant. So he was going to be transferred now to Rancho. And so he agreed, and he got his carriage. He took one servant with him. He got his carriage. It was horse-drawn. And like I said, it was 1861. He traveled 500 miles, and it took 30 days for him to get there. And when he got there, he was working, of course, but he had enough time that he could wander the hills of the Himalayas. And he used to love that. He said that they were so beautiful. He used to roam through those hills. And he'd heard rumors that there were saints that were blessing those hills, and he longed to meet them. So one day Lahiri was out and he was walking, and he heard a distant voice, and it called his name. And he started thinking, it's getting late, and it's dark. And I really should be turning back because, this is a jungle, and he didn't want to be stranded out there in the middle of the night. But he had heard this voice, and he continued up. It's Drongiri Hill or mountain, and he came to a clearing. And in the clearing, on both sides, he saw caves. And then he saw a young man, a yogi, standing outside one of the caves. And he waved to Lahiri, and he called him by name. He said, "Hello, Lahiri, come here." And Lahiri was a little puzzled. He was even more puzzled by the fact that this young man looked like him, except for the fact that he had long copper hair. So he walked towards him, and the man gestured to the cave, and he said, "Come in and rest." So Lahiri went inside, and he saw woolen blankets and some begging bowls. And the young man looked at him, and he said, "It was me who called you." He said this to him in Hindi. He said all of this in Hindi. He said, "Come in, it was me that called you. Come in, rest." And Lahiri looked at him, and he said to Lahiri, "Don't you recognize that spot over there?" And Lahiri looked, and he said, "No, sir, I don't." And he said, "And it's getting late. I really should be getting back, and I have to go to the office tomorrow." And then in English, the young man said to him, "The office was made for you, not you for the office." And this puzzled Lahiri even more, because here he was speaking in English to him, and he was paraphrasing words that Jesus had given. And he said, I put the thought in your superior to send the telegram. And Lahiri said, "Well, could you elaborate on this a little bit more? Could you explain this? I don't understand what you're saying." He said, "Well, I see that telegram took effect." And he said, I refer to that telegram that summoned you to these isolated parts because it was I who silently suggested to the mind of your superior officer that you be transferred to Rancho. And when one feels his unity with mankind, all minds become transmitting stations through which he can work at will. And he added gently, "Lahiri, surely this cave seems familiar to you." And Lahiri said, "I stayed bewildered and in silence." But then the saint took his fingers and he touched him on the forehead. And he said, "At his magnetic touch, a wondrous current swept through my brain, releasing the sweet seed memories of my previous life. And that was the touch that the Guru gave him, which awakened all of these past memories. All of the memory of sitting for days with Babaji, who now we understand that was Babaji in that cave. And Babaji looked at him and he said, I have watched you decade after decade. For 3 decades I've watched you. And I've seen you go through all the turns of karma, and you've been twisted here and taken there. He said, but I've watched you, and I've kept your spot clean for you. And I've kept your bowl here, and I would polish your cup, your brass cup. I would polish that for you and keep it all for you, knowing one day, hoping that you would return. He said, I saw you, but you never saw me. And Lahiri, of course, at that point kind of hung his head and said, what can I say? What can I say? Such love that watches over you when you're in death or when you're alive. What can I say? And this is the Guru. This is the Guru. The Guru, how he draws us to him magnetically, and how he wants to give us his gifts. As with Yogananda, when Yogananda first met his Guru, Sri Yukteswar, his mother, some of you might remember this story from the autobiography, his mother had been given an amulet, a special amulet. But it came to her through a sage who came, and as the servant said, there's an odd sage outside who wants to meet with you. And the mother said, sure, bring him in. So he came in and he said, Mother, when your next illness will be your last. He said, but I will give you something for your son Yogananda, and it will be an amulet. And on your deathbed, you should give it to your son Ananda, and have him give it then to Yogananda in about a year, because that will be the time when he will really be deeply searching for God. And so he said, I'm going to have the amulet appear to you, just to prove what I'm saying is true. And so she went into meditation the next day, and sure enough, there was an amulet, and it appeared to her. And she did as was told, and on her deathbed, she told Ananda, Yogananda's older brother, to make sure that he gave it to him. And the saint said he will know what to do with it. And when the time is right, he said it will disappear. And there's nothing that will be able to hold it back. It will not be protected in any way. He said it will be gone. So they gave this to Yogananda with these instructions. And a few years later, after Yogananda had been searching for his Guru, he desperately wanted someone to help him on his path to God. So he went into an ashram. He was in an ashram for a while, and he didn't get along. Ultimately, he did not get along with the other people that were in the ashram. He wanted to meditate. He strongly wanted to meditate, and they had other ideas. He could not see himself just doing work for the sake of work. He had to do something that connected him to his Guru. He had to find his Guru. And he was so distraught that he went into meditation one day. But before that, a few days earlier, or weeks, he had the one consolation, which was that he still had the amulet. And he had hidden it. He had taken it into his room and he'd hidden it somewhere. And he went into his room and he took out the box. He found the secret hiding spot, took out the box, and it didn't look like it had been touched, but the amulet was gone. So when he went into deep meditation after that, he was begging God, you've got to either give me teachings through vision or give me a Guru. And then he heard the voice, and it said, thy master will come today. And Yogananda was crying and wiping the tears away from his eye, and a young priest from downstairs called up and said, Mukunda, which was his boyhood name, Mukunda, come on. You're needed for an errand. Stop meditating. We're going to take you. You need to come with me. We're going on an errand. So Yogananda said, normally I would have had a few choice words, but he resigned himself that day, and he kind of timidly went down the steps and followed the priest to the bazaar. And there he described the sounds. The sun was beating down. It was hot that day. Colors all over, with people that were shopping, women that were shopping, children were playing, priests were in the market. And he turned and he looked down an alley, and he saw a Christ-like figure there. And he was standing there in an ochre robe, and he was very still. And Yogananda looked at him, and he thought, maybe this, no. He said his mind had started to, he was convinced it was his mind that had taken over. He said, no, that can't be. And so he turned and he walked away. And he walked for about 10 minutes, and then his feet became numb, and he couldn't walk anymore. And so he would turn around and he'd start to walk in the direction of the stage, and he could move. And then he was just experimenting, and he'd turn back around and try to walk away again, and he couldn't move. And he thought to himself, he's magnetically drawing me to him. And he turned around really quickly, and he took his packages and he handed them to the young priest, who was laughing, by the way, because of the spectacle of Yogananda turning around back and forth. And he took off, and he ran down and he saw Sri Yukteswar. And the closer he got, the more he realized he was someone that had been in his visions. He recognized his beard, he recognized his lion-like stature, his face, and he threw himself at his feet. And Yukteswar could only say, my own, you have come to me, you have come to me. And he kept saying it over and over and over again. And Master knew this would be the man that would take him to God. And so, what of us? How many of us have had such a dramatic connection with our Guru? Now, I'm sure this has brought me to thinking back on my connection, my first connection with the Master. And perhaps it'll take you back as well. But the point is that the Master's work through channels. And Jesus said, I am the vine, and to his disciples, they are the branches. And so if you look at the vine coming out of a tree, or the branches coming out of a vine, you see that they're not going to get their sustenance over there. They're going to get it back from the root. But that's how the Masters work. That's how God works. He works through channels. He works through Yogananda, who in turn works through Kriyananda, who in turn works through his disciples. Now Yogananda, or Kriyananda, never said he was the Guru, ever. Never did he ever try to make us think. That's our founder. Never did he try ever to make us think he was the Guru, but I think he had disciples. But the thing that Kriyananda showed us more than anything was, what is it like to be a disciple? The amount of energy that he poured out. What is it that draws to us this magnetism from the Gurus that the Gurus have? What is it? How do we get that? And it's through our devotion. It's through our devotion in everything that we do, whether it be work and serving him, or whether it be whatever. Kriyananda was a total example for that. We would have a joyathon, and Swami would go out and walk twice as far as anyone else. He would raise 5 times as much money, and he didn't have the money necessarily. He would pledge it, and then he would raise it. And I watched Swami. He was a man who could have accomplished anything he wanted in his life. So could Rajasi Janakananda. Rajasi Janakananda did. But what did they do? When Master turned to Rajasi and said, where do you get your power from, Rajasi? He looked at Master and he said, from you, Master. That's where his magnetism came from. And so how do we attract that? We have to put out the energy. We have to be receptive. And as Jesus said to those who received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. That's how important a guru can be in our lives. And if you want to, do a crossword puzzle, well, maybe you don't need a guru. If you want to climb a mountain, I think you may need a guide. And the spiritual path is not an easy path. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of commitment, a lot of focused energy if you're really trying to find God. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. The time has come for us to see that there's but one reality upon the earth and high above, the truth that all was made from love. A love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Guide all our hopes and all our dreams, past every glow that only seems, into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. Oh, Master, may thy joy